moment we'll hear from one of the 16. But first, this report from Debbie Tubby.
This week's Queen's speech centred on cutting the country's spiralling debts.
The first priority is to reduce the deficit and restore economic growth.
Those in local government bracing themselves for the worst included a number of highly paid chief executives. The £1.2 billion cut in local government funding will focus minds again on their pay.
No matter how good a job you're doing, can you really say, if you work in the public sector, that you deserve to earn more than David Cameron does? I just don't think that's realistic.
BBC East has learned that at least 16 of the region's council chief executives last year earned more than the Prime Minister, which was then £150,000 a year. They include 10 district and unitary councils and 6 county councils. In Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk and Hertfordshire, the chief executives earned more than £200,000 a year. So do taxpayers think their salaries are justified?
Nobody from Bedford surely can be paid more than someone who runs the country.
Councils are getting more than what he's getting. That doesn't seem reasonable to me.
And I do feel they're paid far too much for what they're doing.
3 of our chief executives are in the top 10 of the highest paid in the country. Joe Killian in Essex earns £230,000. Suffolk's Andrea Hill, £218,000. And David White in Norfolk, £212,000. When it was revealed Northamptonshire County Council's former chief executive, Peter Gould, was paid a £300,000 lump sum and an annual pension of £97,000, there was outrage.
I cannot think of many circumstances where I believe a local government chief exec would merit more than £150,000. As I said before, I think it's a privilege to do the job, and I think we get great support from members. We've got very good teams around us. I don't think there is the pressure that some people would have us believe.
The government will now scrutinise the pay of newly appointed public employees earning more than the Prime Minister. Debbie Tubby, BBC Look East.
Well, we've received statements from some of those chief executives defending their salaries. One of the 16 is Rob Tinlin from Southend Council. When I spoke to him late this afternoon, I started by asking him if he thought his salary was justified.
I think you actually have to look at the job that's being delivered by top officers in local government and actually pay them according to the type of job and the ability to recruit really good talent.
But the Prime Minister is running the country. You are running a small part of the country.
Well, it's a false comparison, really. The Prime Minister is the senior politician who is in the job because he wants to have political influence, to influence judgments and influence the way the country's going. The equivalent is, I suppose, the leader of a council, the top politician. The direct comparison for me is with the top secretary in the Cabinet Office or in Downing Street or the Department of Communities.
Well, why does the Chancellor then think it is you who should be capped?
You'd have to ask the Chancellor that. I presume that because we're a publicly accountable body and our salaries are good salaries, but you've got to gauge that salary against the nature of the job we're actually delivering.
And what about now we are obviously in straitened times with cutbacks almost everywhere. Would you believe that chief executives should take a pay cut?
Well, interestingly, I and the other senior officers in this authority last summer actually offered our employers that because we're paid a basic salary and then we're paid some performance pay on top of that, but only if we deliver against the targets that have been set for us, we voluntarily offered to cap that at a maximum of 1% for this year. So we have no quibble with recognising that the country is going through difficult times. But I would also say that as we go into difficult times, what you actually need are really well-qualified people with enough experience to be able to steer the ship safely through the storm that we're facing.
We just heard from Chris Mallender in that report in Corby saying it's a privilege to do the job. And isn't this really about working for society rather than the amount of money you get paid?
Well, and I think Chris is doing a wonderful job in Corby, and I think I've been doing, along with my team, a really good job in Southend. It is a privilege to work in the public sector, but equally what you actually need to do is to be able to recruit and attract the most talented people into the public sector in competition with the private sector. If we're really talking about actually trying to get the best people in, then we need to get the best people in and pay them the appropriate rates for the job.
Mr. Tinlin, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
And there'll be more on this and on public sector pensions in the Politics Show, Sunday at 11 a.m. on BBC One.
Now, as you may have heard, a painter and decorator has been jailed for plotting to smuggle millions of pounds worth of cocaine into the country. The drugs were hidden inside a shipment from Guyana, which was intercepted by police in Rotterdam. Now, they replaced the drugs with sand. British police tracked its movements from Felixstowe and then moved in as Neil Tindling and 2 other men cut open the blocks near Chelmsford. Well, Sally Chidzoy was in court today and she joins us now. Sally.
Well, good evening. Well, Chelmsford Crown Court heard this afternoon that Neil Tindling, who's from Bishop Stortford, was the prime mover or main man in this plot to smuggle cocaine weighing some 225 kilos into the UK. Now, Tindling was jailed for 22 years tonight for his part in the smuggling attempt. His accomplice, Christopher Foyle from Stebbing in Essex, got 8 years. He'd been paid £500 to cut open the metal blocks. The third man, Brandon Coates from Leeds, will be sentenced tomorrow. Now, the cocaine had been hidden inside corroded metal blocks. Military police in Holland became suspicious about the load and intercepted it at Rotterdam. They alerted British police and cut open the blocks to reveal the cocaine. They turned the tables on the gang in a classic sting. They removed the drugs and replaced them with fine sand, as you've just said there. The blocks were welded into one piece again for the onward journey to Felixstowe. Now, the gang were filmed at this yard in East London shifting the metal before taking it onto a barn near Dumbo in Essex. Now, the men were caught red-handed trying to cut open the blocks.
Sally, it doesn't sound surprising then that in court this was described as a sophisticated plot.
Well, it most certainly was, involving hundreds of thousands of pounds to buy the drugs in the first place. The operation to trap the men was coordinated by the Serious Organised Crime Agency, acting on intelligence-led information. The judge said today the gang leader was playing for high stakes and lost.
We've prevented them getting massive amounts of cocaine on the streets of the UK. This would have been destined for anywhere in the UK. Street value, 22.5 million. I think that probably tells you how sophisticated they've been and the massive profit motive that there is for these people. Unfortunately for them, on this occasion, it didn't pay off.
Before sending the 2 men down, as I say, the third one to be sentenced tomorrow, the judge told them it had been a huge importation of cocaine and that the investigators themselves deserved congratulations and thanks. Now back to the studio.
Sally, thank you very much.
The population of this region will grow faster than